in control of our fears is clinical psychiatrist, Dr. Say it for me, Doctor. Sekandari, and it's a psychologist. So how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
I know I was going to say the last name, and that's my fear right there. My fear is, of course, getting people's names wrong, and that brings up anxiety to me. And now I mess up. And so that's something we're here to talk about, because it is, of course, Mental Awareness Week. And this is where we are here to help and talk to people. But one thing, as we said, anxiety. And so what are some of the different anxieties that you come across that you're looking to help people with?
Well, anxiety right now is the #1 disorder in the world, and ever since the pandemic, it's actually on the rise because it's really triggered a lot of our fears, right? Fear of failure, fear of the germs, fear of virus, fear of dying. And so for a lot of people, it's exacerbated anxiety symptoms. And so there's all the different reasons people have anxiety. So there's just getting on stage or even doing something like this would be anxiety provoking, or messing up and saying somebody's name. Those are the reasons. Like fear, of course, I mean, we're talking about fear, but fear is not a bad thing. We don't want to eliminate fear because fear is there to help us and help us protect us. But normally we have this narrative in our mind. A lot of the fears are subconsciously triggered, like 95% of it. And did you know that we only are born with 2 fears?
Oh my goodness, what are they?
Loud noises and falling. So we're only born with those 2,
wow.
But all the other fears we accumulate over our lives.
That's
from our parents, yeah.
Wow, from our parents and just from different things?
Life, we pick it up. So we don't want to pass on our fears to our kids, because a lot of them don't even have those fears, and we just, without even realizing it, we pass on our fears. Like I had a conversation recently with someone that said, a long time ago when they were really little, a dog came up to them and scared them, and so to this day they're terrified of dogs. I mean, we're not normally born with a fear of dogs, right? But we end up accumulating that. Well, but what happens is that our subconscious, it goes into the subconscious level, and we're not even aware that these are being triggered. And so we're being controlled by these fears without even knowing exactly what's causing them. So it stops us from living a really joyful and free life.
Yeah. Let's go back to a little bit about that with the dog and being startled. Do you think that all of a sudden the parents are like, well, I don't want my child to have that anymore, so they keep them away from dogs instead of letting them be near them again so they can get used to them just like dogs get used to them? Is that something that we need to start looking at, going, stop our fears and let them find their own?
That's exactly what we need to do, because we don't want to feed that fear. We don't want to feed irrational fears. We don't want to feed illogical fears. And that's what we normally do. We don't even stop to think, well, why am I afraid of this? Maybe when I was really little, I was afraid because I didn't know. But now I'm an adult and this dog doesn't scare me anymore. But we don't reevaluate that fear. We don't stop and say, this fear no longer serves me. Why am I still perpetuating and feeding it? But families, like you said, they end up avoiding, oh, he's just afraid of dogs. We don't want him to be near the dogs because he'll freak out. But teaching them how to overcome that fear and transform that fear is what we want.
Yeah, and that's what you're doing, and you have a program that you want people to, of course, come and sit with you and do, because it will help them with the anxiety, and that's the main part right there.
Well, our goal is to eliminate anxiety, and fear is at the root of anxiety. So for me, it's an online course that I have available for anybody that wants to work on understanding the root cause of their fear. They can go in and just watch this training about how to overcome and understand the root cause and then transform that fear so that they can take action. Because a lot of times we have our goals and our dreams, but when fear steps in, it's like we want to push the gas pedal, but then fear slams on the brakes. So we want to take that foot off the brake and figure out how we can make this fear work for us and use it to take inspired action.
Yeah. What's a couple things you could tell us right now that we could work on right now at home, or even with me? As I said, my fear of messing up names, and I mess them up, even though, so how do we work on that?
Well, first of all, not to judge yourself too harshly and not to be so tied to that, because we avoid fear because we're afraid of getting hurt, we're afraid of pain, we're afraid of embarrassment. It's not really fear that we're afraid of. We're afraid of all those other things, like, oh my gosh, I messed up that person's name. They must think all this stuff, and our mind goes into this whole other world, right?
Yeah.
So just be okay about it, have fun about it, and just say, you know what, this is something that I messed up. It's not a big deal. But it's really important to calm our central nervous system, because we end up activating the fight or flight when that happens, right? It's like, so if you messed up and you created this whole narrative of, oh my gosh, I'm so awful, I can't do this, then you're not going to be able to do it again the next time. You're going to create a bigger story behind it. So change that language, change the narrative and the interpretation you associated with that action.
Got it. I like it. Where can people find more about, of course, the program that you're offering?
So they can go to transforminganxiety.com/fear and just instantly get access to the course. And I hope that that really helps them understand their core reasons for their fear and then transform it.
I like it. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks.